So, sort of shot and chaser to that whole Apple has its own LLM story, sources also say Apple has discussed multi-year deals with NBC News, Condé Nast, IAC, and other media organizations to train its generative AI systems on those various companies' news articles. Now, we've talked about this recently. Remember, OpenAI just signed a deal with Axel Springer, but that's the point. Weirdly, Apple finds itself in basically the same position as OpenAI. They have to pay up to get data to train on. Meta doesn't have this problem. They have all the data from Facebook, from Instagram, from their users. Google has all the web that their search engine has crawled, and they have YouTube. But suddenly, Apple's vaunted obsession with user privacy, which has been such an advantage for them for years, means they can't access the data their billions of users produce every day to train on their forthcoming AI. So Apple has to pay up to others. Of course, they can afford it, but still, quoting the New York Times, the technology giant has floated multi-year deals worth at least $50 million to license the archives of news articles, said the people with knowledge of the talks who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive negotiations. The news organizations contacted by Apple include Condé Nast, publisher of Vogue and The New Yorker, NBC News, and IAC, which owns People, The Daily Beast, and Better Homes and Gardens. Some of the publishers contacted by Apple were lukewarm on the overture. After years of on-again, off-again commercial deals with tech companies like Meta, the owner of Facebook, publishers have grown wary of jumping into business with Silicon Valley, end quote. Apparently, the publishers were nervous about the extensive scope of Apple's proposed terms. The core of the proposal involved a wide-ranging license for the publisher's entire archive of content. This raised alarm bells about the potential legal liabilities publishers could face due to Apple's utilization of their materials. A significant point of contention was Apple's opaque strategy regarding the integration of AI into the news sector. Given Apple's considerable user base for news on its platforms, this lack of clarity there was seen as a potential competitive hazard. But despite those concerns, according to The Times, a sense of optimism remained among some executives about the possibility of a collaboration with Apple. They noted Apple's proactive approach in seeking permissions was a stark contrast to the practices of some other AI-driven companies. The other AI outlets have, in their opinion, been training their generative AI models on their content without consent for a while now. The Times says Apple's leadership has engaged in internal debates for years now about gathering data for developing generative AI products. Apple has tons of data on its users, or it could have, but it doesn't want to make use of that. Apple's cautious stance on data collection, particularly from the internet, is long-standing as well. Take the example of Apple's acquisition of Topsy, a social analytics firm, in 2013. Following the acquisition, Apple instructed Topsy to halt its data aggregation from Twitter. This directive was in line with Apple's policy against collecting data that could potentially include information from Apple customers who also use social media platforms like Twitter.